Now we're going to turn to the annual Trish Vradenburg Memorial Lecture. This is an honor in memory of my late wife and partner in our fight over many years against Alzheimer's disease. Trish died of a heart attack, ironically. I had my own heart attack. I know she's up there saying, George, we picked the wrong disease. Her grandmother died of the disease in the 70s. Her mother died of the disease in the 90s, and her own sibling has this disease now. So that's 3 generations over 40 years. And quite frankly, it looks as if this disease is aimed like a dagger at my kids and grandkids. So we committed ourselves to do everything we can for as long as we were able to tackle this disease. Trish's optimism was unstoppable. She was always upbeat. She always thought that the unreachable was reachable, that the can'ts that we kept getting from so many people really were cans. Her ability to tackle life's challenges with humor, with warmth, with persistence gave those around her the energy to keep going no matter what the odds. She dedicated her retirement to stopping Alzheimer's in memory of her mother and her grandmother, and to save our children and grandchildren. And I've continued that mission. I'm grateful to Andrea Pfeiffer of AC Immune, who gave us the idea for this annual Be Trish lecture. Be Trish, because at Trish's memorial service, her brother spoke and said, how can you honor Trish? And then recited her optimism in the fight against this disease. And he said, you can honor Trish by being Trish. Be Trish. Keep your optimism up in the face of continued adverse news, continued adverse developments. Keep your optimism up and keep driving. This year, I'm proud and honored to have Dr. Janet Woodcock, Acting Commissioner of the U.S. FDA, give the Trish Vradenburg Memorial Lecture. Thank you so much, Janet, for doing this lecture this year. Over to you.
Good afternoon. I'm pleased to be with you today and deeply honored to give this year's Trish Vradenburg Be Trish Memorial Lecture. I want to thank George for inviting me to speak and commend him on convening this incredible meeting, as well as for everything he and Trish did and continue to do in the battle against Alzheimer's disease. I was lucky enough to know Trish well enough to experience her unstoppable optimism and drive. As a writer, she penned articles for newspapers and magazines, wrote for TV shows, including Kate and Allie and Designing Women, published a well-received novel, and wrote a semi-autobiographical play about a sitcom writer whose mother develops Alzheimer's. It was this last topic that most affected her later life and work, leading her and George to raise millions of dollars for Alzheimer's research and spent countless hours lobbying for a cure. Losing a person you love so deeply and feeling so helpless to stop it makes you rage, cry, swear, and ultimately become an advocate, she wrote. That's when you can take some power back. The unflagging optimism and extraordinary commitment she demonstrated is an important part of how we'll win the battle against this devastating disease. But of course, we also need the science. And we still do not fully understand the pathogenesis of Alzheimer's. Medical science has a distance to go before we have a full understanding of this disease complex biology, so we can identify molecular targets for early intervention. The many failed development programs in this disease have led to some discouragement, but we're making important progress. Imaging allows us to make a more definitive diagnosis, ante-mortem. CSF biomarkers may yield a better understanding of CNS pathology. And as everyone here knows, FDA recently granted accelerated approval to a monoclonal antibody targeting amyloid plaque based on the surrogate of reducing brain amyloid burden as indicated by imaging. This approval was accompanied by a great deal of controversy, especially because the field had become disenchanted with the amyloid hypothesis after a number of failed development programs. But FDA performed an analysis across multiple anti-amyloid development programs, including those showing no clinical effect, and found that reduction in plaque correlated with slowing of cognitive decline, whereas failure to impact plaque correlated with no difference in the rate of progression compared to placebo. Now, additional development programs targeting amyloid plaque are ongoing, and we have to await clinical outcomes to truly understand the role of these therapies. However, even if they are successful, they're clearly not the whole story and would not be a cure. Until we get a better understanding of pathogenesis, we will not be targeting the root cause. And as we know, there may be decades of pathology ongoing before the disease comes to clinical attention. Like other serious diseases where treatment has tremendously improved lives, such as cancer or HIV, therapeutic interventions at later stages of disease often come first. Only afterwards do we get to early detection and treatment, and finally to the desired state, which is prevention. But there is great cause for optimism. A growing coalition is bringing increased attention and focus to the fight against Alzheimer's disease. The sheer number and range of interests and parties is staggering, and I'm confident this combination of effort and attention will help us find answers. The efforts to harness the energy and information from cohorts of patients, to develop clinical trial platforms, and to increase funding for important areas of research ranging from brain health to basic neuroscience will surely lead to breakthroughs. And we've seen this kind of energy and focus that is building before. During the HIV epidemic of the 1980s and 90s, for instance, science responded to that highly visible public health crisis with an explosion of research and product development. In the early 2000s, the sequencing of the human genome and development of genomic science enabled great insights into cancer pathogenesis. This in turn led to a skyrocketing development of cancer treatments and a growth in the number of companies working on this, many of which met with unprecedented success. Both of these examples demonstrate how in a remarkably short period of time, by usual standards and scientific standards, diseases widely presumed to be fatal can become conditions that can be managed. They also remind us of the critical role that regulators like the FDA can play in supporting the work of advocates, researchers, and developers. By applying a regulatory framework to the evolving science, we can provide stability and a coherent, overarching vision of the path forward, what needs to be done, and the best ways to achieve it. This not only facilitates progress, but helps ensure that certain standards of data and research are met. And this is particularly important when scientific advances are coming fast and furious, and there may be a lot of controversy and dissent over interpretation of data. Some see regulators simply as gatekeepers, arbiters of data, or in the FDA's case, the agency that green or red lights a product. Nothing could be further from the truth, and it should not be this way. Although we do make sure products meet our standards for safety and effectiveness, make it to the market, that's just a piece of what we do. Our mission is to protect and promote public health and help meet unmet health needs. We do this by facilitating and supporting innovation, by acting as a linchpin between groundbreaking basic science and the development of safe and effective medical products people depend on, and by providing important guidance to developers and supporting and building collaborations and partnerships. We help provide that glue to hold this whole enterprise together. In our work on HIV, for instance, the FDA supported landmark developments that assess CD4 T cell counts as a marker of HIV progression, which changed the course of clinical practice and treatment development. Our acceptance of this surrogate for efficacy was extremely controversial at the time, but effectively moved the development of antivirals forward until we found additional surrogates, such as viral load, that we use to this day. In the world of oncology, the FDA has helped to identify a full spectrum of unmet needs coming from patients and clinicians to funding sources to the development of international partnerships. We were able to establish rigorous ways of using existing regulatory pathways to increase early access to treatment for patients, while also holding development programs to appropriate standards for safety and effectiveness evaluation. Consider, for example, the important work being done by the Critical Path Initiative. With funding from FDA, this effort brings together industry partners to establish and validated patient-reported outcomes in many diseases. And we also, of course, have academic partners and anyone who's conducted trials or is working on patient-reported outcomes. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Critical Path for Alzheimer's disease, a public-private partnership designed to create new tools and methods to increase the efficiency of the development process, leading to treatment for neurodegenerative diseases with the shared characteristic of Alzheimer's. It's another example of how the FDA can provide the support and framework for collaborative efforts that make a difference. Because just like HIV and cancer, this is going to require a community and collaboration globally to get what we need done. And support for rare diseases is another area where FDA plays an essential role. Developers and sponsors are often not willing to take on the investment risk for research into products to treat rare diseases because of the small size of the patient populations. Our rare disease program, developed a decade ago, was designed specifically to help bridge this gap. And there's more to do there. And of course, we're going to work on rare diseases while we work on more common diseases such as Alzheimer's. And there's certainly crosstalk and cross learnings from what we're doing in each of these areas. This meeting that you're having is focused on building global momentum and collaboration, because that's the reality of responding to public health challenges today in our interconnected world. We can move so much faster when we're all working and moving in the same direction. The FDA works closely with our international regulatory partners in almost every area of healthcare to address public health needs and build global momentum for successful intervention. We have a number of established international relationships and partnerships, including the International Council on Harmonization, ICH, which looks at technical issues for registration, and the International Coalition of Medicines Regulatory Agencies, or ICMRA, which is, of course, just the regulators, but a very large number of regulators from all around the world. And also we have numerous ongoing technical collaborations between the FDA and EMA, for example, including discussions about neurodegenerative diseases. Each of these collaborations offers opportunities to share information and solutions in the development of drugs and medical products and respond to local and global challenges. The COVID-19 pandemic has accentuated many of these challenges, but has also underscored the essential role of international regulatory organizations in responding to them, providing a crash course that's brought together regulators, researchers, and industry to address the many unmet needs that occurred. Working with our regulatory colleagues around the globe, we've been able to articulate gaps and provide guidance to companies interested in product development, advising them on the best strategies for success in ascertaining safety and effectiveness. And another role as regulators I'd like to highlight is to look at what's being neglected. We all know of individual disease areas where too little progress has been made and attention, sadly, is lacking. And until advocacy really got started in Alzheimer's and in dementia in general, it was one of those areas. But is no longer, fortunately, due to efforts of people here today and many others. At the FDA, we have a unique perspective and an awesome responsibility to bring a comprehensive view of the full landscape and a laser focus to virtually every disease area, whether they're making enormous progress or very limited progress. To do this effectively requires collaboration with stakeholders across the healthcare and public health spectrum, including engaging many who might not have been fully involved. And we take this responsibility very seriously. Thanks to the hard work and commitment of people like Trish and George Vradenburg, there already exists strong public awareness and engagement in the efforts to find treatment and cures for Alzheimer's disease. In some ways, this is beginning to be reminiscent of the scientific ferment we have seen in HIV, AIDS, and cancer spaces. But we have much more to do. As many of you know, President Theodore played an important role in creating the FDA. Like Trish, Roosevelt was known for his determination, drive, and resolve. He once said, when you're asked if you can do a job, tell them, certainly I can, then get busy and find out how to do it. I can't think of a statement that better reflects both Trish Vradenburg and the FDA's approach and commitment, except to let Trish say it in her own words. A cure for Alzheimer's, a fantasy, a wish, an impossible dream. The same words that were said to Galileo, Edison, Curie, Salk, and whoever dreamed up the internet, she once wrote. Yesterday's dream is today's reality. I pay tribute to Trish's memory, optimism, and motivation by committing that the FDA will continue to demonstrate focus, resolve, and extraordinary effort in our work on this issue until we have actually conquered this disease. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you for your generous words. Thank you for so reflecting Trish's optimism and resolve, and quite frankly, your optimism and resolve, and the FDA's resolve to serve and protect or promote and protect the public health. Thank you for your courage, your kindness, your leadership, and your commitment over so many years and your lengthy career at the FDA and serving patients.